because we were looking for ideas to get our students outdoors, spark their curiosity, and gather some data. And there are a bunch of different projects that we're going to come up with later that you can do using these. So I'm going to quickly go into the first one. The first video is on camera trapping, and you'll hear a bit more about that in a minute.
River Otter Ecology Project studies river otters and their return to the San Francisco Bay Area after a long absence caused by pollution, loss of habitat, and fur trapping. They are doing well here now because we have done much of the restoration and conservation work needed to make our waters and shores attractive to otters. That provides the otters healthy food and safe neighborhoods, elements all of us living beings need to thrive. The fact that river otters are doing well in our densely populated Bay Area helps us understand that humans can and must help keep the planet healthy for everyone. One way we can discover what animals are in our neighborhoods, our schools, or wildlands is by using special cameras to take photos or videos of animals that pass by them. The cameras take photos or videos automatically, meaning we don't have to be there ourselves to collect the images. Images and photos are data. They help us understand the animals and their relationships to their world. Megan Isidore will show you some basics about how to set up one of these motion-activated cameras. Maybe you can set one up at your home or school and see who your wildlife neighbors are. Not only that, but you can keep track of what species and how often they pass by your cameras from season to season and year to year. You can also observe their behavior. That is data, the kind of information biologists collect to help us figure out how best to protect wildlife and wild places. I hope you can join us in this important work for our planet. We've found lots of otter tracks and scat, or poop, on this dune, and from the signs of rolling and the corridors they use to come in and out of the water, we know otters use this area to go back and forth, to eat, and to roll around to keep their fur in good shape and to deposit scat.
Now, a camera trap is a camera. It's not really a trap. It's a trail camera, and it takes photos or videos. And the cool thing about these cameras is that you can set them up and start them going, and then the only time they take pictures or videos is when something comes across them. And so they're called motion activated. So they're activated by an animal or a person coming across them, but they can also be activated by other things like blowing, waving grasses, or like waves in the water, or even by sunlight glinting off the water. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're setting up these cameras. Now, the first thing I want to do is think about where I want to put it. It's really nice to have a handy tree to tie the camera to, because there you've got it. You're all set up on a tree. Here, we don't have a tree. There's nothing very easy to set a camera up. However, I brought this handy stake. So I'm thinking about where to put this, and I'm looking, if we have the camera facing those reeds, see how they're blowing in the wind? No, that's going to make the camera go and go and go, and it's going to think it has animals on it, but it's just going to be the blowing reeds in the wind. So you want to set it up where there isn't too much vegetation blowing. So another place we could think about setting up this camera is pointing this way, because we know the otters are coming back and forth in the water. But if we have the camera pointing at the water, then every time the water moves or every time the sun glints off it, it's going to set the camera off. So that's, again, not the best place for the camera. Then the other thing we want to think about is how the animals are moving through here. They are coming up here, they're coming up this path. So it would be great to have the camera pointing toward the path so we can see them coming up the path for a minute or two instead of just crossing the path for a second or two. So I try to set my camera up where it's pointing sort of down the path rather than across the path. So the next question we have is, should we point the camera this way down the path or that way down the path? And I'm going to choose this way down the path because, as we talked about, all that vegetation is there. Let's point it this way. Then we want to think about how high should it be? If we had a tree here, we could put it way up in the tree, and then it would take photos and pictures of the animals from above. But what I like to do is put the camera at about the height of the animal I'm trying to take the photo of, because that way we get the best photos of them of all. So I'm going to put it, otters are about this tall, so I'm going to place the camera on my stick about right here. And how do we do that? We have a camera case. Now the case we don't always use, and you may or you may not use it, but I like to use it out here especially because we can lock it. And unfortunately, people do steal cameras, so you want to take care to make sure that they're locked in if you can lock them. And the cases help you do that. So I do not have the perfect setup here. Normally, I would have a rock or something to let the camera sit on. I don't have that now, but one of the things about doing any kind of field biology is you use what you have and you make it work. And sometimes it's trial and error, and you have to come back next time for better with the stuff that you actually need, but I can almost always make something work in the field. One of the things that really helps is bungee cords. Make sure that it's not covering the lens. That helps to hold it where you want it. One of the things that we always wonder about is what our camera is actually seeing, because we can't get down there and get behind it and know what it's seeing. A really handy thing to do is take your cell phone, put it on photo, turn it around, and hold it against the camera, right against the camera, and click. And then you can tell what the camera is seeing, so you know if you need to adjust it. So that is one handy thing about camera trapping. One of the things that I always bring with me is a laminated friendly sign telling about what I'm doing with this camera, who we are, giving information about our project. I put it on the camera so that if people see it, they'll know what's going on and they won't, hopefully, get upset or worried about it. So there's my friendly sign. And another handy thing to have is your biology notebook. Whenever you're out in the field, you want to be able to take notes. You can take notes on your phone by using your voice memos, but I really like to read these Write in the Rain notebooks. If them and a pencil, no matter what the weather is, you can take notes on what you're doing and what you're seeing. Once you have your camera up and it's taking pictures or videos, make sure you check it. You can check it every day, you can check it once a week, but check it and keep a record of what you get on your camera.
Camera trapping is a great way to learn lots about our wildlife neighbors, because when humans aren't around to make them wary, they go about their natural wild lives. We could get information about how many there are, whether they're healthy or not, whether they are young, their behavior, and their vocalizations. When we do it for a long time in the same areas, we can begin to learn how they use their habitats. Camera trapping is a fun and interesting way to collect data. Check out the River Otter Ecology Project's website, Facebook page, and YouTube page for lots more videos of river otters and other animals from our camera traps. You can also look at our website for reports about our camera trapping project, including lots of data to learn and have fun with.
Yay. All
That
right.
was awesome, Megan.
Thank you. So I have, Eileen, do you want to tell the group about the good news that we talked about earlier?
Yeah, what we were saying is, right now where everybody is they're doing their own unit, whether it's like Molly, where they're going to be out in the back looking at different trees and plants, or I know that Julie and Angela are going to be dealing with the marsh or that little area of the bridge. And so what I was saying is, with the commitment letter, we said, oh, we would have some money available for you if you wanted to buy journals or whatever. But instead, if people would like me to purchase them the camera and the Oh, look at Molly. I would buy the camera and the little case to protect it and the lock, because then your kids could do like Molly's. They could be outside, they could make observations, they could come up with conjectures, they could do all of this work. And then you could put the camera out and then you could see, did the kids' conjectures, do they want to now change them? Do they have more questions? So I was just thinking, if that's what you all would like, that's how I could spend the money.
My next question was going to be, do you have a recommendation? Because I was going to figure out how to do a total donors too. Because I'm like, I would love to do that in our back section.
We do, Molly. Thank you for asking that. And I've prepared a document. That's what I was going to put into the chat, which I can't put in there yet. But I've prepared a document on basics of camera trapping, and it includes how to do it. It includes where to buy cameras. It includes how to choose the right camera. And I'll also be happy to help you out if you have more questions about it. But and it talks about how to set it up and how to make sure you're getting the right information. But what I'm really interested in doing, if we have time, is we started a little bit late and I don't want to go over today. But
Okay, but Angela had her hand up. If we can find out her question, is that okay, Megan?
yes, I can't see hands up.
That's okay. That's why I was sharing it with you. Angela, what was your question?
My question is, Megan, as part of your video, you showed a shot across water to apartment buildings. Was that the San Rafael Canal or was that a different location?
Oh no, that was Lake Merritt in Oakland.
Okay, so because I was wondering if we had spotted any in the San Rafael Canal.
There are otters in the San Rafael Canal for sure. And if you look on our otter spotter map on our website, you can see where they've been seen. Yeah.
So Molly, that's right behind your school.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be a little hard if you've got a camera pointed across a canal. It can be a little difficult. Otters are really small, and if it's tidally influenced, you're going to get a lot of glinting and tidal movement on your camera. But we can talk anytime about how to set up trail cameras. We could even I would be happy to meet with a bunch of you and do a little discussion about how trail cameras work.
I think that would be great. Maybe what we do, we figure out where everybody is with their projects, and then we can put a small group together and it'll all be good, Megan.
Yeah, and we can also talk about data sheets and how to set them up and what they can help you with. Yeah.
That would be great. And I think what we'll do is we'll make sure we get the kids' questions first, because I think the beauty of it is to get that inquiry so that by the time they get the cameras, they know what they're looking for. And they've got a few conjectures that then they can see is this really what does happen?
So
That-
maybe start with,
You could set the cameras up on the school campus, but you could also maybe set the camera up in the neighborhood where most students come from, if there was a cool spot in the neighborhood.
yes, and the only thing about that is that wherever you set it up, if it's not on school or private property, you need to get a permission from the landowner, and you also need to really be careful about where you set them up, because people are really flip out about seeing cameras taking video or photos of them. So you have to be very, very clear about who you are, what you're doing, and have permission. That's all. And also be prepared to have it stolen if it's very visible to a lot of people. We have had few stolen over the past 9 years, but we have had probably 3 or 4 stolen.
So I might have missed this, but how do you see the videos? Are they webcast to your computer?
I did not talk about that. The videos, these cameras, you have a chip in them and you just switch out the chip and you look at the chip on your computer.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions right now about this? Okay, let's move on quickly to the track casting video because we're almost at the end of the time. We'll just go to that. Go on to the track casting video. Go there, go there. There it is. All right, I'm gonna skip the opening because you all saw that. It's the same opening.
Take a little. Otters often cast of.
Here we are.
Volunteer Aaron Bartow down at the beach to make some track casts. Casts are a model of animal prints we can make easily. It's fun, and as you'll see, it helps us discover and share information about our wildlife neighbors.
Hi guys, so we're here at Abbott's Lagoon and we're trying to find an otter track that we could take a cast of. Otters often come up out of the water because they hunt here and they use the shore to either eat, take a little nap, or go to the bathroom. So we're gonna look along the bank to see if we can find any. Here you can see that we've recently just found a fresh track. So now we're trying to decide what kind of track is it. Well, if it was an otter, you can tell that there's 5 toes, and this last one on the side is almost like a human thumb, so it's down and to the side a little bit. You can also see the webbing in between each of their toes, because otters have webbed feet, which helps them swim faster through the water. You can also see there's slight claw indentations, which otters use their claws to climb up riverbanks or tearing apart their food. Today we're going to be taking a cast of this track. A cast is a type of copy that you can take home to show your family, your friends, and anyone else you want to show the cool new track that you found. Today I'll show you how to make it. So first step is you need a piece of cardboard, a long piece of cardboard to wrap around the track. Make sure you don't damage the track while you're doing it, and stick it in the mud. And then you're going to take a clip to hold it closed. There we go. Next, you're going to take your plaster, which is in a powder form. You're going to take a mixing bowl. And you're going to measure out a 1/2 cup plaster. And put it in the mixing bowl. And then you're going to take a 1/4 cup water and add it in. Put those to the side. Next, you're going to mix up your plaster to make sure it's nice and liquidy. You want it to be similar to pancake batter. Once it's nice and liquidy, you're going to tap your bowl on the ground to knock out any bubbles that might have formed. All right, when it's nice and ready, you're going to pour it into the cardboard, but try not to pour it directly onto the track. Try to pour it next to it so you don't mess up your cool track. Now that our plaster is in our track, we have to wait 1/2 an hour before it dries, and then we can finally see what it looks like. While we wait for our otter track to dry, now we're going to try and find out, number 1, what this print is, and then we're going to try and take a cast of it. So this print, you can see there's 4 toes, and the front 2 have large claws on them. You can also see that all 4 toes are very similar in size and regular. So what this tells me is that it's probably a coyote track. First, we're going to take the cardboard again. We're also taking this track in sand, which might make it a little different than our previous track, which was in mud. So we're going to see how the 2 differ. We'll take our cardboard, put it around the track, sink it into the sand a bit. All right, next we're going to take our plaster again in our mixing bowl. And we'll again take 1/2 cup plaster. And a 1/4 cup water. All right, and now we're gonna mix it until it's again similar to pancake batter consistency. Make sure you squish out all chunks of the plaster so it's all liquidy. All right, once it's the right consistency, we're gonna tap it again to get bubbles out. And then pour it into our cast, of trying to avoid the track itself, but off to the side. All right, once it's completely in, you can smooth around the top to make sure that it's filling the entire track, but don't damage it. And now we wait another 30 minutes for it to dry. All right guys, so it's been almost 30 minutes, so we're gonna check our cast to see if it's ready. The first way to test it is to see if it's hard on top, which it is, and if it's giving off a slight amount of heat, so it's slightly warm, because as it hardens, the chemical reactions make it turn a little warm. All right, so we're gonna pull the cardboard off. Oops, looks like it got a little stuck. And we're gonna slowly peel it up. So it looks like it got a bit of mud stuck to it, which we can clean off to see what we got. All right, as you can see, we got a pretty successful print. You can see all 5 toes, you can see their little claws and their little thumb that's still down and off to the side, so this is clearly an otter print. Now it's time to check our second cast. We're gonna feel the top to see if it's hard, to see if it's slightly warm, which it is, so I think it's ready. We're gonna lift up the cardboard. Oh, it got stuck. Put that to the side. And now this one's covered in sand. All right, and now we're gonna try and rinse it off so we can try and see our track a little better. So you can see a little bit, you can see that there are 4 digits, all very similar. It is a little bit trickier to see the claws on this one. You can tell from the different textures that we did the prints in. The first one in mud was a lot cleaner, while the one in sand had a lot of the sand stick to the actual plaster, making it a little bit trickier to see. So it's a good idea to try and do your track print in a harder surface. But both turned out fairly well for a first time. This was my first time trying casting as well, and I think they turned out pretty well. However, if yours doesn't turn out great, just keep on trying, because that's experimenting and that's what science is.
Keep in mind that animal prints are a little hard to interpret because we don't often find the perfect print outdoors. Prints can be overlaid on each other, missing parts, and look very different depending upon the substrate: dirt, sand, clay, wet or dry, snow. Professional trackers spend a lifetime learning how to recognize and interpret tracks. Have fun with it and share your information with your friends, teachers, and other trackers.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching those 2 videos. Are there any quick questions? I know it's 3:30 already and we need to get going shortly. Any questions quickly? No. Okay. So what are we going to do with these 2 videos? We're going to set them up on our website, River Otter Ecology's website, and we'll put additional information about both camera trapping and tracking in there. So more how-tos, more lists of what you'll need to do those, and I'll be available as well for questions on those. So that is that, unless there are more questions or interest in kinds of projects you can do with them. We'll talk more about those in the future too. Okay, I'll turn it over to, I think it's Jessica. Are you beginning now?
Yeah, I can start. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Megan. These are really amazing resources that I think we're going to be able to use in a lot of different ways. And
I was even thinking about the tracking video about how there's certain points that you could pause it and have students, you know, think about and brainstorm, like, how would you set up the camera on that bank? Like, why would you do it a certain way? And then reveal your answers to those questions. And I think there's a lot we could do with that. So thank you so much. They're wonderful resources.
You're welcome.
All right, well, it's great to see all of you. I'm gonna call up the slideshow and we'll get started today. Hope everyone's well. So today we're kind of obviously sort of wrap up some of what we've been doing over the last, 4 or 5 months. And we're gonna revisit some of our intentional talk moves, coming back to the work that we've done using the ambitious science teaching practices. And then we're gonna be thinking about the connections that we can make to the work that we've been doing together and our current science units, the units that you're doing in your classrooms, and the on-site explorations that Sigit and Jenny can support at your schools. And so we want to bring it all together and talk about then what's next. What is the summer going to look like and what are we planning for? So we're really glad you could join us today. So just want to remind you that the talk moves that we're talking about, of course, come from ambitious science teaching. We've talked about these before: probing, pressing, following up, opening up crosstalk, wait time, revoicing, focusing. So the first thing that I want to do today with everyone is actually revisit our models. And I'm going to model for you some of these talk moves, how you would open up student discourse and get students to be thinking about and sharing what they think about their models and revisions that they would make to their models. So we're going to do this as a big group today, starting off. So I just want to let you know that I picked a model pretty much completely randomly. I just pulled one that a group had made previously. And so we're going to use this model as a jumping off point for thinking about, what does this model represent? What is it, what do the different parts mean, and what revisions might we want to make to this model now based on our understanding and how what we know has changed, especially based on what Megan has taught us, the data sets that the River Otter Ecology Project has provided and the experiences that we've had since October. So what I would like is for all of you to participate now as learners, right? So thinking about this model and based on what you've learned, how could we improve this model, or how could we help explain what's on this model and then what is not on this model? So to start us off, I'm going to have us focus primarily on this left side, on the 40 years ago. So remember that this was our models. This is the model that we made to talk about how and why have river otters returned to Marin over the last 40 years. What would have changed over time that would have led to their presence in our backyards, in our neighborhoods, in our local ecosystem? So let's start with this 40 years ago and think about what might have been different 40 years ago, or even beyond 40 years ago, that would have made this habitat less, again, less friendly, less welcoming to the otters. So let's start off with this picture. I'm wondering if anyone can help explain, what does this picture mean within that context? What does that represent to you? This was provided by the group to help explain what it looked like 40 years ago.
Is there any way to make it larger?
Oh, yeah. Here, the other thing I can do is, if you want to look at it on your own screen on a Jamboard, let's see, I can. Boop.
40 years ago, I had better eyesight.
Yeah, right. Sorry about that. Let me figure out how to do this. Sorry.
There.
Helped a little.
Yeah.
So we're not, you don't need to be able to read these, but if you can read the stickies and you can see most of the images, and I can even, oh, no, I can't here. Okay, well.
Thank you.
Okay, let me know if there are any other problems. So let's start with this image right here. If everyone can see that image, what do we think that means? Or what do you think that represents in this model?
Pollution.
Pollution. Okay, can you say more about that? What do you mean by pollution?
40 years ago, we didn't have this sort of regulations The malt, I think, was just forming or hadn't formed, was in the process of forming. So, and I know where we are in Bolinas, around 40 years ago, even more, the lagoon was one of the most polluted places in Marin County. So it's probably from runoff and not a lot of regulations about what was going into local water systems.
Can you explain more about what malt means? What is that?
It's the Marin Agricultural Land Trust.
Okay.
That preserves a lot of, puts definite lines on what can be developed in rural Marin. There is though the cows, and I know that they do cause some pollution as well. So it doesn't necessarily keep it.
Great. So you're talking a lot about runoff. You talked about agriculture and maybe the cows. You talked about protecting the land, right? And protecting the natural habitat. Does anyone want to expand on any of those ideas that Anna mentioned? That's great. I think that's a great way to unpack what this image might represent. Any other thoughts, ideas?
How about ideas on what was going on in the Bay? We were just talking about the coastal areas. How about San Francisco Bay at that time?
That's a great question, Megan. How are our watersheds connected to the Bay? And what might be happening in the Bay might be affecting the otters? Any ideas? Yes, Willow.
I don't know what was happening in the Bay 40 years ago, but I wonder if there was also more pollution. Maybe more shipping was going into Oakland, or I know that within my lifetime, and I'm 43, I've seen a huge shift in the way in which wetlands have been valued and protected. You know, in terms of areas that I went to as a kid that were just, you know, bare earth at the edge of the bay are now, you know, these beautifully restored watersheds and wetlands, and there's public hiking paths and a lot more space provided for that as an important element of our local ecosystem. So I'm guessing that it's because it was bad.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you're shifting some of what you're saying into this other half of our model, which is talking about, well, how is it different today? What does it look like now? And so you talked about that idea of space. Does anyone else want to expand on that idea of like just creating that space, leaving that space for? Yep, Angela.
So Marin Agricultural Land Trust also tries to protect the traditional farmlands so that the farms can continue on, but it also makes efforts to help those farmers kind of optimize their land. So for example, when I went on a field trip one year to a sheep ranch, they showed how at one point they had cleared away a lot of vegetation and how that had not been the right thing to do on that land. And STRAW, which is Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed, helps students to help do that. And I know that restoring native plants to the lands helps not only the watershed, but the animals within it. And they have seen more positive reintroduction of animals just because of that. And so I'm hoping that the otters are one of those results.
Wonderful. So how would vegetation be important to the otters?
Vegetation would protect, like the salmon running upstream to spawn. They need kind of those willow roots and shadowing plants that will allow the water to not evaporate as quickly to support that spawning and the water retention in that area.
Awesome. So you can see how we could probably now expand back into a conversation about thinking about what otters eat, right? What we've learned about otter, how they, what they eat and why. And so then what are the other resources that otters are dependent on? And we could be thinking about how we would add that to our model. So I'm going to close out there because I thought that was really great. And we got, most of you contributing ideas that I think we could easily represent to this model and would add some more depth and understanding. And you see how I just started with one part of it. I focused in on one image and it opened up into this broader conversation, which I thought was great. And you guys were able to make some really wonderful connections. Eileen, do you want to say anything else about that?
No, I just, I wanted people to be able to reflect on the talk moves. And I don't know if people brought the book because I actually put the pages there. It's at page 54 to 63 in the book. Yeah, but with that, does anybody want to talk about any of the probing, pressing, follow-up? Like how did Jessica open up the crosstalk? Because that's really our main goal for this year with the students is how do you get your kids talking and making sense of science?
Well, my move was just a follow-up move to what Willow had already said about malt. But I do think there were some opportunities there for some summarization. And I did hear some of those moves. I'm looking for the summarization part, but
the revoicing.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And for pointing it out, I appreciate it. But also quiet time where we could reflect kind of in order to add more.
I also think only looking at a little piece of it as opposed to the whole Jamboard, but focusing, so that focusing piece.
Yep.
Otherwise, this can be so overwhelming, you don't know where to start, so.
And
exactly. Otherwise, it's too much. And what am I supposed to focus on? What am I responding to? So I think that the instructor can really provide that focus to at least get the conversation starting.
And then my move was to refocus a little bit, to move the focus over from the coast to the bay, because that kind of opens up a whole new stream of talk, as it were.
Yeah,
Oh, and
so
I
you
wanna
kind of
add
asked a what if.
that also connected, you connected to this, to our participant schema, because we're on the bay side over here, except for Anna and Willow, they're more on the ocean side.
Yeah.
But bringing it back to the bay provided some other cultural connections for those that live on this side. So that accomplished a number of things. Thank you. Okay, and then I guess the only other question and connection I had, because we're really trying to tie it all together, is if you go to that next slide about the science and engineering practices, so how does what Jessica and Megan have done so far, what practices have you engaged in that also helps make sense of this?
Should I just jump in? This is Willow. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Go for it, Willow.
Okay. Well, we are asking questions kind of collaboratively. I don't know, did we define any problems? I mean, the problem was already maybe defined, or maybe Anna defined it by saying the pollution picture was a problem. We're definitely developing and using a model. And I don't know if we're to the point of designing solutions yet, but we are constructing explanations. So we're doing at least those three, I think.
Any others that we feel we've hit?
Well, I think we're planning and carrying out investigations, and we're all at different kind of stages with that, but just investigating our own sites and trying to figure out what's available close by so that we can actually design a coherent investigation for the kids. So I think we're all doing that because we want to collect data to support our hypotheses. And I do think cameras and tracks, making the little plaster tracks is going to be a lovely addition.
I agree. And just to add on one more thing, I feel like there's a huge connection between understanding how to use these taxonomy, the talk taxonomy moves, and the science and engineering practices. Because if we're supposed to be communicating information and asking questions, all of this really requires us as the educators to be able to make those intentional moves. Would people agree with that? Does anybody want to add on to that statement?
I don't
He's got
want
the wait time down. Go ahead, Angela.
I don't want to be a chat hog, but I do think just by having a group focused on a local observation and resource helps unify us as teachers in our focus. And it kind of supports us. And imagine being able to get a camera actually, because that would make a huge difference, I would think. And I know that that's a huge investment, but I do think if we could actually find evidence of an otter in our area, it would be so exciting for the kids.
Yeah, but I also think, Angela, you're going to find so many other things in that marsh. It's okay if it's not an otter, so long as it, and that's our next thing is we're going to get into what Molly's working on, and then hopefully you guys brought some stuff of what you're working on. It might not necessarily be the otter, but you can still connect whatever you do to the watershed. And so that's going to be our whole goal this afternoon, is how to make those connections. But I love it. And we'll get the cameras, my friend. Okay, Jessica.
Wonderful. So I think, Eileen, you wanted them to do a quick journal, right?
Yeah,
correct?
I'm sorry. I was so distraught because
No,
my
it's okay.
dad was upset when I saw him today and I had to talk to the doctor. But so when you looked at the model, you were just making sense of the current model. You didn't go into adding stuff, Jessica?
We were talking about, yeah, what do we see there? And some of those ideas I think were new and could be added, but I think we were just more reflecting on the model that was there and what the different parts represented. So
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah, then do you guys still have your electronic journals? Can you do a thumbs up if you still have your electronic journals?
Oh, I have it, but
Yes. Okay. So yeah, what we wanted you to do, since you got to learn so much more from Megan today, is if you could do a quick journal, right, about now that you've learned so much more, what do you want to add to your model? What is it that you've learned that you want to add? And we'll give everybody a minute of quiet time to go ahead and write that.
And I'm sorry, what models are we talking? Are we talking about the one, like the example that we just looked at?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
I can't
if
even
you haven't
remember
revisited. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Anna. Go ahead.
I can't remember which one mine was.
And that's okay. We're actually going to just start over with this one, and you can add your new ideas to
Okay.
To this. You're going to have this model to work with.
Okay, You guys, we have such a small group today. Originally, we were going to put people in small groups so they could practice the talk moves, but I'm feeling like that's not the most burning issue right now. But if somebody has something crucial that they want to put in, we can give a minute or so towards making claims based on evidence. So that would mean you just say, well, I claim that we could add this to the model because, and then others, if they want to, could ask clarifying or a probing question. And then if not, we'll just go on to the next thing. But if you want to spend a minute or two on that, I want to allow you time to do that. So does anybody, based on everything that they saw, the past few sessions, as well as the video clips today, is there anything that you want to make a claim to say, hey, we could really add this to the model now?
I'd like to add the to the today, the I think it's the Otter Cider webpage. That resource, I don't know exactly what it's called, but then just the time when we did all of that working around the Marin area where the otters were sighted. I might add that resource. Otter Spotter, thank you. I'd add the Otter Spotter.
Thanks, Anna.
I also think we should add the dates that that program began and when we first saw otters coming back. Because, you know, just having somebody track that has been really a boon for us.
What did it allow you to learn? Like when you say that, like what did it allow you on your model? How does it help you explain the phenomena?
Me personally?
Or all of us?
Well, it helped me set up a comparison between what was 40 years ago and what has changed since then. So to be able to track some of those changes and actually some of the trying to go back to recreate a more supportive environment. Cleaner, supportive environment.
Thanks, Angela. Does anybody want to add on to that or ask her more questions? Okay, thanks, team. Okay, then Molly, we're gonna go, Sagit is gonna go to the slide about curiosity. You ready, Sagit? And I just wanna say that this next part is thanks to Molly. She allowed me to go, not when kids were there, but she had Jenny and Sagit over to look at her site. And then she also allowed me to look at it. And then she took kids outside and they took their own pictures. And so now what Sagit's gonna do is just guide us, because some of the questions we've been getting from all of the teachers is what happens. It's almost like mathematics. Like sometimes when you open up inquiry, it can be a tiny bit scary. I love Willow's cat. It can be a tiny bit scary because we don't know what they're gonna say. And we may or may not have the answers, okay? And so we're just gonna model some questions from you guys, and we probably won't have the answers, and that's okay. We just want you to metacognitively be thinking about what do we do with the questions, even if we don't have the answers. How is it more about the process versus the answers? And then after that, we're gonna go into what Molly's kids actually said, and then look at her unit. And then all of us help Molly say, how can she connect what her kids are doing to the river otters and the watershed, as well as the unit that she needs to teach in science? Does that sound good? We'll spend about at least 30 to 40 minutes doing that, and then we'll call it a day. All right. So Megan, do you have the slides up? Or who was working the slides? Jessica, were you?
Oh, I thought Sagit should, or one of you should, because you're leading this part. So
okay. Okay. I can do it for Sagit. Hold the phone.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I only slide. I'm only putting the framing of this section. Yeah. So
You're doing everything.
you and Molly are
Okay.
gonna do the whole
go.
interesting part.
I'm teasing.
Okay.
Okay,
So
here we go.
I think it first of all,
Here you go with your
we have
framing.
kids here are
You
playing
ready?
on skateboards.
Okay, you ready? And I'll put it on present if I can figure it out. Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, so thank you for the teachers. We went to the schools and we learned so much. And one of the things that we thought about is that with everything expected from us in schools, how many opportunities kids actually have to be the drivers of their own learning, especially in school, and how many times they can do it even outdoors. And this is where we're talking about it, it's sending them to outdoors. So one of the things that we're thinking about and we're talking here is about students, is about identity. And when students conduct their own investigations, we can also remember that for a lot of kids, it's unthinkable. Yeah, it's not something that they see themselves as especially in school, but in general, like, are we researchers, investigators, or even outdoor people? So our role mostly here is, and this is kind of like, I think will help us, it helps me when I, also with my kids and when we work in a museum, is to think of the center of gravity is about identity, is about this shift from the unthinkable, going from this crossing a boundary from unthinking about yourself as this person to start seeing yourself as a person who can do it. And this is where we are there to support them. And one way to do is just to also think of ourselves as researchers, as people who are curious about what the kids are curious about. And as researchers, we try, not always successfully, but we practice it, of putting our assumptions aside. Oh yeah, I'm sure why they asked this. Or yeah, I know the answer. We just try very hard. I think that every time it's practice, because it's our nature, I think, is to immediately go there. But if we all just try to do it and just be with the kids in their own puzzlements and be puzzled with them and be also, and I think all these talk moves are, like Eileen says, they are the ones who helps us also. They are tools for us to stay in this puzzlement moment and not hijack it, or not thinking that we need to do other than be co-present with the student in that moment. I just want to say another way for us to support kids in this boundary crossing is what we do when we take them outdoors, providing them the tools to investigate. Because when kids hold tools like the magnifying glass and the measurement and the binoculars and the different stuff, then it kind of like eases them. It gives them the strength and the ability to be in that moment that is maybe uncertain and awkward and not feeling themselves, but cross this. So these are things that I think we talked about.
Thank you, Sagit. That is so beautiful. Okay, and then this is, oh, I have such issues here. I'm trying to advance. Okay. Now, one of Molly's students took this photo. And what were the directions, Molly?
They were just supposed to take photos of things that they thought were interesting, but they needed to be somewhat close. I didn't want pictures, and some of them did take pictures of far away, but I wanted them to get up close to things. And I have two cohorts. So my morning cohort did one area, and then my afternoon cohort did another area, just so that we had a variety of pictures to share amongst the two cohorts. So that was just the directions. They could take a picture, anything they thought was interesting. And some kids spent a lot of time trying to find their 3 pictures, and some kids were done in 10 seconds. So it was really interesting to watch.
Okay. All right. And then you also allowed them to sit on the benches and quietly write and make observations, right?
Yeah, I don't have a class set of iPad. So we were working with a couple phones and an iPad and sharing. And so the other kids, while they weren't taking pictures, were sitting there just drawing pictures of things that they observed.
Okay. And so then we're all gonna practice with this, but we want to get lots of wonderings out there. and knowing that the unit that Molly is going towards includes life cycle, there's a life science, there's a physical science, and then there's also the earth science. So maybe you guys just start talking, and we're not in the class, but we would obviously be recording all of this. Just take some time, go ahead and say it out loud. And then if you have a probing question for somebody, you can do that too. But like, what are you noticing and what are you wondering?
I noticed that it is some kind of flower that did have a bloom, and the bloom is now dying and about to fall off.
And how do we know that? You made a conjecture there. It's about ready to fall off.
I know that because I have watched the life cycle of bulbs in a variety of locations for a number of years, and I recognize the crinkly, dried brownness of this particular flower as an indicator that it is the flower itself is about to drop off of the plant.
Thank you. Hey, Willow. So can anybody repeat those adjectives that she used to describe it? What did she call it? How did she know they were going to fall off? How'd you describe it?
Crinkly, brown.
Dry.
Everybody say that. Crinkly,
Crinkly,
Brown.
brown, dry.
and
Dry.
we're going to be doing a GLAD unit. That is so what you could write there for that. Now, what else did Willow say though? She just turned us on to something else. She said she knows the something of a bulb. And how do you know it's a bulb?
How do I know it's a bulb?
Yeah, or anybody else?
Well, yeah, somebody else jump in.
She notices the leaf structure and that it's a monocot part, I think. And I've recognized the flower structure. I'm wondering if it once was an iris, which I know comes from bulb.
And what makes you think that it's an iris? Just if you're making a conjecture, what about it makes you think that?
The shape of its crinkly, dry brown flower heads.
Okay.
It looks like it was, and I've seen crinkly, dried brown iris flower heads that have looked like that. Possibly a daffodil, but I wonder if it's an iris, one or the other.
So that's a question that we could record and investigate later. How many think we could do that? Okay. What else do you want to know more about? So that's one good wondering we've got out there. She brought up something about life cycle too. Do you see any other evidence of life cycle of anything else in that picture?
Looks like there's some leaves on in this pot. I'm curious about where this is. It looks like it is an island of dirt and green and a sea of concrete. And I'm wondering if this tree is the one where the crinkly brown dead leaves come from the bottom.
Molly, you can tell us where that is. You can go ahead and just tell us where it is and what that is.
It is on our school campus, and it's in a section that has a lot of those. I like how you called them islands. So they're like little islands, and there's a tree in the middle of most of them. One of them is missing a tree. We had a whole conversation about what happened to that tree, or was there a tree there that's now. So there's a bunch of them in this area, but it's mostly, you're right, concrete, and there's benches, picnic benches, and now there's a tent for sitting.
Okay.
I also noticed that there is small sprigs of green grass, which, being a California native, I know only happens for a few months in the year, which gives me a very clear indicator of what time of year this picture was taken if we didn't know, because I know that that particular green grass only lasts for a couple months here.
So would we want to make a conjecture? Do you think in 6 weeks that green grass is still going to be there?
What'll that be? End of April, beginning of May? It'll still be there in the beginning of May, but it might have gotten weed whipped down at that point.
It also might depend on how much rain we get between then and now too.
Yeah.
Oh, so could we put that up there too? Like, what do we think? So why do you say that about the rain, Molly? What's the rain gonna do?
Well, it makes me think that the grass is pretty shallow roots, and so it needs water. And so if there isn't enough moisture, then it'll probably die sooner. But if it continues to be watered, then it might live a little bit longer.
And you also said something. What else was she talking about, you guys? How deep the what were?
Roots.
Soil.
It all,
How deep the soil or the
Thanks, Hayun. Yeah, and in the soil, how deep the roots within the soil? Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Yeah, and is that something that you could investigate?
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's got a number of good investigations there. So if we were to put up the vocabulary so far, you guys just shout out some of the vocabulary that you would want to write down here, that your kids have already come up with. What have they said?
go into the whole 6 plant parts. Great song by the Banana Slug String Band. I've heard a lot of plant parts being mentioned. Bulbs, leaves, roots, stems, leaves, flowers.
Yeah.
Stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds.
They've come up with a lot, haven't they? And how much of the life cycle has been mentioned? So could you go in a number of directions, Molly, with this? Sagit, are there other questions that you would want to bring out here at this point?
I wonder if, oh, I'm sorry.
No, Anna, go.
Go, Anna.
Someone mentioned the effect that this might have with the rain. And if there are other little islands like this, it'd be interesting because I'm sure there's a maintenance person who may be watering. And it would be interesting to see if one was watered and one was not watered, what would happen.
Oh, a comparison.
I don't know if any of these little islands get watered. I think it's all based on just the rainwater.
Rainwater, yeah.
Yeah.
But that would be a really cool experiment to water one of them.
Yeah.
And see what happens, predict what, I don't know what grade are you teaching, Molly?
5th.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're probably a little too old for this, but to what would happen if you watered it, or what, you could even water 2, like what if you gave one 1 gallon and you gave another one 5 gallons, and what would happen, change over time.
For me, it was also mind-blowing to know that you knew that it's a bulb. Like, what is it even? Like, I didn't know. Like, and then how do you know something that you cannot see? Like, you talk a lot about things you cannot see. So I really want to know, like, and can I see it? Like, or I'm gonna, like, how would I know? Like, a lot of the things you said, I didn't have words for. So like, I would say, like, there are these bumps on the tree, or how do we, these words that you said.
Yeah.
I would be curious about what kind of tree that is that maybe does it need water in the summertime? And if that isn't watered, where is it getting the water? What is it connecting to under the ground?
I was also curious, Molly, you just said that they had added a shade structure. So do the different little islands have different amounts of sunlight?
Yeah, I mean, none of them are under the shade structure, but yeah, I would imagine, I hadn't thought about that. So
You could take that into the 5th grade science unit on sun and moon and stars, and use that to track if, how much sun each of those circles got at various times of the year. Go out with like the chalk and notate, when the sun hits it and when the sun leaves, and then track to see how much sun each of these various places gets. That could lead into an interesting investigation.
And what's growing, like if one is getting more sun, does it have more vegetation inside of it versus another that's not getting more sun?
And do they all have these bulbs? Because bulbs grow with this rhizome underground, these you know, kind of root type things that yet generally people plant. It's not a plant that spreads by its seeds. It spreads by its bulbs. And so is there a bulb in every one of these things? Somebody had to have planted it there. What would happen if there was one that didn't have one and you wanted to transfer a bulb and put it there?
One of the
And
other
then-
conversations is this one picture is of the flowers that are dead or dying. The other ones are still blooming. So we had a question about why is this one look like this where the other ones still look, and they are, I believe these are daffodils because I think they're the same flowers as in every other of the, so they're in every single one of the island things. So, but we had a conversation about that being able to, when we're comparing it to the other.
Awesome. Okay, so then Molly, let's go ahead and connect because we could go on forever, but do you guys see how this kind of matches what I think maybe Angela said it earlier about how sometimes zooming in on one thing can actually take you deeper and we can make those connections, right? So this is the question where we are, it sounds like all of you. How do we leverage the lessons to help students understand what they are seeing on the schoolyard? So in other words, you have lessons that you need to teach in your curriculum, and how are we actually going to leverage those so that they can make the local connections? So we have, okay. We're not going to go to the breakout room yet because I want us to do this all whole group for right now, but we're going to all help Molly. But I thought I had the Jamboard connected here and I don't see it. Okay, it's okay. Don't panic, people. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second and I'm going to get the Jamboard up. Oh, and I have to put it in the chat too, so hold on. Hold on. Molly, are you so excited? You're getting help. Okay, but
Need all
wait.
the help I can get.
Your fearless leader here has to figure out how the heck to get you the Jamboard. Don't give up on me, friends, okay?
I think I found it. I put it in the chat.
Oh, you put it in the chat? Oh, how
I just put it. Yeah, is that the right one? Can you just double check for me?
Yeah, hold on. Does it say those 3 things?
It says, yep, it says making connections and then.
Yeah, you did it.
Okay, great.
Okay, groovy. So you guys click on it and then also I will share the screen and we're all going to help Molly. And then we'll help, if anybody else brought something, we'll help you guys too. So I'm going back and then I'll share and then we're gonna work on it together. Yep, okay, are we all good? Can you all see it? And did you all check in? Okay, so then here's what we wanna do. So Molly, you can start and you can tell us, I sent it to everybody. Did anybody download it? Molly's, the 3 standards, the 3 performance expectations. Did anybody click on it?
I did
No.
not.
It's okay. It's okay. We still love you. You guys are doing 10,000 things, so I'm just impressed that you're here. So Molly, why don't you start with the first one, whether you want it to be the earth science one or you want it to, whichever one you want it to be. Could you just take a sticky and type what the lesson science concept is? And then your friends will talk about how you could connect it to the picture. Oops, I can't hear you. Sorry.
I have way too many things open right now. So what I sent you though doesn't have the actual performance expectations. It is the lesson, the essential questions for the lessons that are in the science series that we are supposedly going to adopt in San Rafael.
Okay, so maybe just say the concept, like what is, and I'll even type it for you if you'd like, but what is that first concept?
So the first one, well, the first concept is the major, Earth's major systems. And the essential question is just what are the Earth's major systems?
Okay, anything else within that that they're supposed to deeply understand? Or just this?
No, it's a piece. The big idea for the whole unit is how is energy from the sun essential for life on Earth?
I'm just gonna type that there because that's also, well, I'll type it on a separate one. Who can repeat what Molly just said? What was the big idea? Anybody repeat what she said?
How is energy from the sun essential for life on Earth?
Oops. How is energy from the sun essential on Earth? Okay, now you guys can go ahead and I'll just put it up here because that's like a big idea. So knowing that, and you saw the picture, you can start putting in stickies. So going with the Earth major systems and also knowing that the big idea is about the sun, how can you connect that to her schoolyard project of observing just the trees and the plants out there right behind her classroom? And also, how can you connect it to the watershed? Mm. And Molly, I'm curious, like, because I know that your unit, they want to start with the whale, but I just feel like you've got river otters too, right?
Right.
And I'm seeing that question about what Earth systems do the otters interact with? And then wouldn't it be interesting once you watch the whale and you take notes on that, then is what's the same and different versus what the otters need, right? And then what do your plants need? What are you thinking, Molly? You take over.
So as I tried to explain to Eileen, and we're not in this unit yet, and I'm trying to get through the 13 colonies, so my brain isn't in this unit quite yet. But after my kids doing their observations and thinking about it, I like the idea of connecting with something a little more local, because my students, a lot of them have never even been to the beach. So whales are still very abstract. There's still something they see in pictures. And so I would love to find something a little more that they could actually potentially even see. They all happen to live on the canal, so the chances of them seeing river otters is definitely greater than seeing a whale. So, but I would also like to see what else we have. Like the whole track camera thing would be awesome to see what else is living in our schoolyard, to see what else, how else we can connect it with the watershed and, watching the water flow. Unfortunately, we're probably past the rainy season, and my meteorologist keeps telling me on the news every morning it's probably not going to rain again. So I don't know if we'll be able to see that rainwater and see how it affects it, because we do have a hillside out there that it runs down and it does collect in different places. So yeah, I kind of just want to see what the questions the kids have too. And they were very curious about a lot of the trees, because they had They had some of the trees they could tell me, that look dead now. They're like, oh no, this tree isn't dead. Every year it has leaves. And so it was really kind of cool. So we took pictures of specific trees to see what they would look like. It makes me think next year I need to start that in September as opposed to in March. So hopefully we'll be on campus next year in September. So that'll make it a little easier.
Yep. Yep. What's the big driving question for there's the earth science and then there's the life science. What's the life science question?
So hold on, let me find them. So the, well, there's the, how does matter cycle in ecosystems?
Oh, I think you got some connections for that.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Molly, is your connection for that one?
Well, I just think looking at the stuff that's dead and alive is a total, seeing how that matter does cycle in the ecosystems. I think that would be just having some time to look and explore those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And also when Jenny and Sagit were there, we were talking about the soil and finding out healthy soil. So finding out how that dead matter, like places that have more dead matter, is that soil healthier than places that don't have dead matter? Like I think that would be a great thing for kids to investigate, how that helps the soil or hurts the soil, and how it changes the soil.
And then what's the you had one more. It was the physical.
Yeah, the last one is the energy transfer in the ecosystems.
Oh,
Energy
Jessica,
transfer.
that was yours, right?
Yeah, tracing energy as it flows through the system. And
Yeah.
what is that? What's evidence of energy transfer? Yep.
Do we have any? Did you observe any out there? What could we say?
See, that's where I need help. I don't know what I'm looking for.
Well, help her out, friends. That's why you're here today, to help Molly. It's Molly's birthday was yesterday, and this is her gift. Okay, so come on, friends. What energy transfer? Help her out.
Happy birthday, Molly. Well, where does most energy come from? Oh, sorry. Who's talking?
I was trying to, it's Jenny.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Bulbs are a great example of energy transfer because they have these, like, the bulbs are underground for most of the year, and then the leaves pop up, and then the flowers bloom, and then everything dies back again and goes back, and everything goes back into sustaining the bulb until the next time they bloom. So that's kind of cool. And you can dig up the bulbs and not worry about killing them. You can actually dig up the bulbs and pull them apart and plant them and make more. That's a cool energy transfer example, I think. But you go ahead, Jessica.
Oh no, I was just going to talk about the ultimate source of energy. So again, tracing it back to where does even that energy from the bulb that's in the bulb come from?
Well,
yeah.
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, Molly, those flowers won't bloom without the sun.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That whole idea of the shade structure and how it's affecting the sunlight. So it also makes me think, so that one that's dying, is it because of the shade? Because those shade structures were put up, I don't know, last fall. So is it just not getting enough sun? Maybe it's not the water or the, what is it? So it is like, what's going to happen to the plant life that's around that shade structure?
Or did it bloom earlier because it had sun for a different amount of time? So
maybe.
It has to be a continual observation kind of thing.
Yeah. And I don't know how long those bulbs have been there. I mean, I don't, bulbs. Just,
forever.
Yeah, probably.
Good questions. What else are you concerned about, Molly?
What else am I concerned about?
For your unit. We're trying to make it great.
I mean, I talked to Eileen about this and Jenny about this and Siggy about this. My whole problem is I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot, and I don't have a problem not knowing, but I feel like at some point in time, I need to help the kids make connections, and I don't know the questions to ask to help make connections.
What
'Cause I don't
tools
know
can
it
you,
deep
what
enough.
tools can you offer the students to find their own answers? Like you could offer the student, like their, you know, you could offer them field guides or keys or online resources. I'm just thinking like maybe there's a list instead of knowing if we want to like run with the ideas that the students are coming up with and the questions that the students are coming up with, then maybe the next question as a group is like, what tools do they need to find the answers or find more guiding questions to get to the answers? Am I making any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, you know, Molly, while I hear that, you know, you're like, I don't know about this or whatever, like that's fine. Like you're right there where Sagit was saying, like in the place of curiosity with the kids. So,
Right.
you know, model for them how you would figure that stuff out. Go to the library and get a whole mess of books on plants and be like, great, we're all going to learn. I'm taking this one.
Yeah, and the Seek app, if you're using the Seek app, it has like a whole bunch of things connect, like it doesn't just identify the plant for you, it gives you a bunch of information to dig deeper into learning more about that plant.
Cool. But are you feeling at least like in looking at this, I feel like your three big driving questions from that unit, you can connect it to both the River Otter watershed as well as to what you have right on the schoolyard. So does that part make you feel comfortable?
It does. And it makes me start thinking too about like looking at this through a lens of what the kids find interesting. Like they took pictures of things they thought were interesting. And our third grade friends that were outside or in the classroom right next to where we were had snails. So we got to bring the snails out and that was totally exciting to them. And so thinking about just those things that the kids are totally interested in and then looking at it through the lens of how does that plant or animal get energy and how does that all work together?
Wow, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Does this, in terms of other teachers that are here, are you going to want to do a similar thing with your unit so that you can see how it all ties together? Yeah.
Yes, but we have to be in school long enough to actually do an observation and not just reading, writing, and math.
So,
Monday.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Can't you? Monday, you get the kids for 4.5 hours, Angela, right?
Yes, we do. Hallelujah. Finally.
I'm so happy. And you've got that huge marsh. How about you, Anna? When are your kids coming back longer? What do you
Oh,
get?
they're back. They're back. And you know, the monarchs were here in the fall and we were studying the monarchs and they still are. And they just became absolutely fascinated. And someone heard that I was studying them. So they put me in touch, and actually a graduate who's now a senior in high school was volunteering for Prinza in Point Reyes, Claudia Beckenmeyer, great gal, and hooked me up with another woman, Heather Clapp, who's a mom here. And I was wanting to plant a pollinator garden here last year. But thank goodness for the pandemic, because the Midwestern girl in me was just going to plant a bunch of milkweed. And, you know, milkweed, they're overwintering, so they don't need milkweed. It makes them too frisky. They need the nectar plants. So that's one good thing of the pandemic. So long story short, the school had made these nice concrete pads to extend so we can have outdoor classrooms. And there was this big berm of soil at the back, which are a wonderful landscape maintenance guru did not know. He's like, what am I going to do with the soil? And so we said, let's put a pollinator garden. So this past week, we got connected with Spawn and brought out about 100 native plants. And the 6th grade got involved. We got all the soil, we spread the compost, and we put in about 100 native nectar plants. And this week, they actually saw a monarch there already. So that was pretty exciting. So we didn't necessarily, I can weave river otters into it, but we're really kind of monarch crazed. And then there was perfect timing too. Just a couple weeks ago in the Marin IJ, there's a great article about the cross-county effort to reestablish the monarchs, because the numbers were just pretty horrific this past November for the Thanksgiving count. That's what we've been doing.
Awesome.
And Anna, we put in a pollinator garden last spring, and we discovered that our kindergarten groups had planted Asian milkweed, which is not what our monarchs really need. And so we have repollinated the native species of milkweed, and that's going to make a difference later on too.
Excellent.
I didn't even know there were so many different species of milkweed.
Yes, so many different species. And I think people just automatically think like milkweed, good for monarchs. And there are native Californian species, but then here in Bolinas, it's just so important to plant nectar plants, native nectar.
Awesome.
And then there's also other neat kind of dialogue happening because of the eucalyptus trees. They went over, monarchs like to overwinter on the eucalyptus, but a lot of those want to be removed because of fire. So
Yeah.
all sorts of multi-tiered dialogue.
Wow. Awesome.
And
Anna. Nice
Anna,
job.
you-
How does that tie in
we
to
need
the science unit and the grade level standards? How are you wiggling all that together?
Oh, I don't know. No, I do know actually. Life cycle, metamorphosis, change over time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. It all ties in. Okay.
Ecosystems, watersheds.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Willow. All right. I know people have to get going, so I just want to show you but thank you. Thank you for helping Molly. Good birthday present, eh, Molly? But also just a good thing to be able to figure out how to make connections, because so often, we jump from one thing to other, but we think kids make the connections, but they don't necessarily. We need to be a little bit more intentional about how we plan and do our connections. So I have to go back to the slideshow. Okay. So before we sign off, I just want to say what's next. So even though we don't have anything else until summer, we are all still here for you. And we're going to be planning the summer. And we would like to do a summer institute. And we want to weave in the environmental principles, because that's really crucial. All of this does connect to the environmental principles. And the Summer Institute would be July 19th to 23rd. And then we want to connect that because in the global change framework, the environmental principles are really kind of a big part of it, right, Jessica? We haven't blatantly said them, but it's there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely there. There's a strong emphasis on systems in the environmental principles. So by using the global change materials, you're emphasizing that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. And what we would like to do for, we did say that teachers that stuck with us during the year, we could either give you the $350 or whatever it was. Look at your commitment letter. You could buy journals or art supplies for your kids. If you want, and it makes more sense, I can actually use that funds and just buy you each one of those cameras with the case and the lock. So you can do that. So you need to tell me what you would like me to do with that. And I'm happy to make it work for you. And then we're really requesting that you bring more teachers in next year so that they can do the summer with you. And then next year in the fall, perhaps take a field trip out to the river otters and or other places you want to go. So we would love your input with it. If we sent you a survey, would you let us know what you want to do? Yeah.
Quick question, if I may.
Yeah.
July 19th through the 23rd, is that a virtual meetup or?
Well, what would work best for you guys? I think part of it would be, but then we were thinking, could part of it be that we go out and meet someplace? What do you all think and what do you feel comfortable with?
I would love to spend as much time off Zoom meeting in person with actual humans, outside at a distance with masks, whatever people feel comfortable. We should all be vaccinated by then. So that would be my preference.
I second that.
Wait, who said I second that?
Molly.
Huh?
Molly.
Oh, Molly. Good. Okay. Anna?
I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of in the middle of summer vacation and I don't know where the winds will be taking me. But if I'm here and not driving my son across country to college, I would prefer meeting in person.
Okay, that's really good for us to know because this we have to see what happens with that other grant team, the environmental literacy, because maybe that's like online in the morning, but the afternoons are all meetups, or there's some days that you're doing one and not the other. So the team will have to kind of figure that out. Does that make sense? Because I agree. I think people are sick to death of Zoom. Okay. All right. Well, you guys, thank you. And I really, really, really appreciate this. And I love the whole team that came about this year in terms of both teachers as well as the leadership team of Sagit and Megan and Jenny and Jessica. Like, we didn't start, the grant wasn't written that way, but I just feel like you guys together were magic. And then I feel like the teachers just kind of took us to a new place, don't you? I really appreciate all of you. I just can't say that enough.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you guys have a nice evening. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Okay, team. That was good. Megan, those videos were so awesome.
Yeah.
They were funny.
Yeah.
I like what Jessica said about even breaking them up and showing part of them and talking about it and then showing more. That's kind of what I had in mind for it and why they're in segments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you can do it next time when we're not stressed. And now you've got them there, and it's an iterative process. And then we can show teachers how to do it too.
There's one more video too, but Ernie.
And what's that one about?
The last one is called Otters 101, and it's kind of a bunch of very basic things about otters. And there's a segment on otter sounds, and rather than saying what they mean during the video, we're saying, what do you think that means? Why do you think that sound is different?
That's awesome.
Great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I am worried though, because I do feel like if we get that environmental literacy grant, I mean, there are parts of it that can go with this group, but then I think the group also wants to go in a different way and meet in person. And honestly, I don't blame them. Right?
When will you know?
Jessica?
Sorry, what did you say?
Sagit, what was your question?
When will you know about the grant?
Oh, I think Michelle sent us something saying the beginning of May. So that still gives you plenty of time to plan.
And what is that grant for? I haven't seen the grant. I don't know what.
Well, there was this whole environmental literacy grant that came out that was for County Office of Educations. And so when we saw it and saw that it was so similar to what we were doing, we said, how could we combine that with this? You know what I mean? And it makes perfect sense because the whole part about the environmental principles and all of that works. And that part you can do on a Zoom, but then I think the group wants to do other stuff that's more inquiry hands-on based, and I don't blame them. Jessica, what were you gonna say?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Sorry, I'm also really off today. I'm having side effects from the COVID vaccine. So I am just.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
I feel like kind
I
of
had
a
it
mess.
yesterday, yeah.
So no, I'm really sorry for today. I felt like I was really out of it.
No,
you were great.
Okay. I just last night I had chills. I had the whole thing. I was just like nauseous. And today I'm like, I'm better, but I really don't feel well. So anyway, I think they do want to focus on sort of, again, what can be done in person and again, I think there was an emphasis on hands-on stuff in the other grant, but I don't really understand. I don't know. I felt like I wasn't quite clear on the story arcs they were really going to tell. I know we talked about using sea level rise as a phenomenon and looking for different phenomena for different grade bands. But I do think that it's still pretty open-ended. Like, I think the way it was written is like, we could really leverage this work as a focal point for the elementary teachers involved. Like, I don't think that would be a problem. Sorry.
Okay. Can you send me like a short something on what you were planning on doing for that grant? Because
Yep. We totally can. Yes, yes, yes. And we had to do it. So Megan, here is the other thing. It had to be done with 3 or 4 other county office of educations. Yeah. So there's like all of this criteria, but for me, it was like, why are we doing 2 things at the same time? And so I can send you the whole grant, not a big deal, but just know it might not get done. And also know that I'm going to be fully retired. And so we need somebody else to do that. I am meeting with MCOE next week to say, this whole year I've been saying, who's going to help? Who's going to help? Who's going to help? And I wasn't going to let it die because I love Christina Lundy. So this has just been a gift of love for her that I'm not going to let this grant fall apart. And then I met all of you. And so it was so much major fun, but we've got to find somebody at MCOE that takes it over and figure out how to merge the two. So, and meanwhile, I think support these teachers, but you guys, I love
you keep recording, by the way.
What?
Your recording is still on.
Oh, thank you. Shoot.
You can clip it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask, wait, now how do let me.
Oh, I can stop it here.
Stop recording. Okay, thank you.